Hi, I am Judith, and my topic is the loss of Normandy. The first link in the chain binding England to the continent was broken in 1204 when the King John lost Normandy because he fell in love with a beautiful and French woman, and they both married really soon, in spite of the fact that the French woman Isabel was engaged to another man, Hugh of Lusignan. And to make the things worse, John attacked the family of Hugh of Lusignan, which they came of a family really powerful and important. So King John attacked them, and the family appealed for redress to the common overlord, the King of France. The King of France was Philip, and he saw an opportunity to embarrass his vassal. But King Philip present charge against the King John, but the King John didn't want to accept because he said that as a king he had no jurisdiction of the French court, but Philip said that as a Duke of Normandy he was. So on the day of the trial, the King John didn't show up, and the court, according to the law, confiscated his territory. And finally, in 1204, the King John lost the English crown, and Philip proceeded to invade Normandy. Separation of the French and English nobility. After the Norman conquest, a large number of lands held in both countries, which were England and France, and a kind of interlocking aristocracy existed. William the Conqueror left Normandy to his son Robert, and England to William Rufus. And as when Henry I confiscated the states of unruly Norman barons. But in 1204, the process of separation was accelerated. The King of France announced that he had confiscated the lands of a lot of barons and a lot of knights who live in England. For the most part of the families that had estates in both countries were forced to give up or to the other. They didn't want to, for example, if they had a territory in France and in England, they had to choose one of them. But some nobles could keep both territories, but some of them couldn't, and they had to choose to where their loyalty was. After 1215, there was no reason for the nobility of England to consider itself anything but English, and the most valid reason for its use of French was gone. French reinforcements. At the very time when the Norman nobility was losing its continental connections and had been led to identify itself wholly with England, the country experienced a fresh invasion of foreigners, this time mostly from the south of France. The invasion began in the reign of King John, whose wife mentioned above, Isabel, was from France. Henry III was John's son, and he was more French in their taste and connections, not only because of her mother, his mother was from France, because of his wife. Henry's son was married to a daughter of the French king Louis. So he was more French than England. And as a result of Henry's French connections, three great inundations of foreigners came into England during his reign, from 1216 to 1262. In 1236, Henry's marriage brought a second stream of foreigners to England. Finally, the third inundation occurred 10 years later when Henry's mother, after the death of the King John, married again with her first love and bore him 5 sons. Henry enriched his half-brothers and married their daughters to English nobles. The reaction against foreigners and the growth of national feeling. The excesses of Henry III in his reckless bestowal of favor upon foreigners were not so completely unfavorable to the English language as might be supposed, because a reaction was bound to follow. Even during the reign of John, there were calls for policy of England for the English. England wanted to speak English and stopped using French. And in the reign of Henry, the antagonism arose immediately after the first team of foreigners came to England. The king dismissed the foreigners from the important offices they held because the king didn't trust anybody, and he fired a lot of people, but they were soon back. Opposition to the foreigner became the principal ground for such national feeling between the years 1258 and 1265. The foreigners were driven twice from England. And when Edward I came to the throne to England, the government officials were for the most part English, and the king warned against the purpose of the King of France to wipe out the English tongue. England wanted to speak English, but France was against English. The effect of the foreign incursions in the 13th century was to delay the natural spread of the use of English by the upper class that had begun earlier. It also stimulated the conscience of the difference between those who participated in English affairs as to consider themselves Englishmen, and those who flocked to England to enjoy Henry's favors. One of the frequent criticisms against the newcomers was that they didn't know English. This meant that there was a general feeling that some knowledge of English was regarded a proper mask of an Englishman.